Okay, folks, welcome to the last of my videos on Isom number 2. These are going to be my final thoughts, but they're not going to be like an overview or a final assessment of how the book is. For that, you're going to need to go to my video, Let's Fix Isom number 2, and screw it. That's going to give you my overall verdict on the book. What I'm going to go through in this video is the little dribs and drabs errors that appear in the final pages, starting from the Bloodruth scene all the way through the end of Isom number 2 and a little bit beyond that. So let's get into those dribs and drabs, starting with unnecessary words. These are kind of bloat words that it might seem to fluff up your dialogue word count, but they're really getting in the way of just your readers having a clean reading experience. For example, in these balloons, you've got a whole bunch of that's, and you've also got a happen to have instead of have, and the ability to emit instead of emit. If you get rid of these bloat words, your readers will still get the same amount of information, but the reader will go through the dialogue balloons faster. So these are just kind of like speed bump words. If you remove them, you get the same amount of information content. So the point of the value in the balloons is the information, not the time it takes to read them. So try and cull those unnecessary that's, unless it's the particular speech pattern of your character. That's one way to look at it. If your character has to speak in this particular way to be consistent with the character, then do that. Otherwise, just get the bloat words out of the way. Unclear text is something that shows up time and again in Isom number 2, and especially in the Bloodruth sequence. For example, we have Bloodruth shouting, "Stand down!" And those are her creatures whom Avery is fighting, and so I would assume that she's calling upon them to stand down. Except the next panel shows her saying, "Unless you want to die," and that means she's talking to Avery. So that first dialogue balloon really needs to pinpoint the fact that she is talking to Avery and not her own creature. Something like, "Stand down, intruder," or "You there, stand down." And that way we'll know that Avery is being the recipient of the command as opposed to her creatures. Next, we have Bloodruth reaching down and picking up the golden card that that Gooding gave to Avery, and this is supposed to get him in with Bloodruth. And Avery says, "That wasn't a key card?" And Bloodruth says, "Does it look like that could be of anywhere use on this property?" Okay, one of them needs to make a decision as to who has the key card now, because whoever has the key card is going to use the word "this," not "that." If Avery's got it, he'll say, "This wasn't a key card?" And if Bloodruth has it, she'll say, "Does it look like this could be of use anywhere on this property?" Because when you have something in your possession, it's a "this," not a "that." So I assume somebody has it, unless she just left it on the ground, maybe. But it doesn't look like that. In this portion, Bloodruth is explaining the concept of dimensions to Avery and the creatures that can come from those dimensions. Avery says, "I'm guessing that's where the wolves and dragons are from," talking about Bloodruth's creatures. And Bloodruth says, "Sometimes I bring back gifts from the travels. You know that those beasts weren't from the hell. How so?" And Avery says, "Let's just say that I would have known if they were." Now, what beasts are we talking about? Well, since wolves and dragons are also beasts by way of supercategory, beasts is a supercategory, and then wolves and dragons are subsets of that supercategory. And also she's been talking about gifts, which also means the creatures that she's brought back from her travels. So there's no reason to think that they've changed from some other creature. But in fact, they have. Avery says, "What I need to figure out is why they set fire to my building." Okay, so those are the beasts that attacked him, not the wolves and dragons and gifts. They're the ones that attacked him in the security house. Well, we need to know that. So Bloodruth needs to say something like, "You know that those beasts who attacked you weren't from the hell. How so?" And then we'll know she's not talking about the wolves and dragons and gifts that she had been speaking about up to that point. Next little bit of unclear text is where Avery is grabbed on to the dragon and is using the dragon for transport. And then the dragon flings him off so that he lands into one of the creatures. And then Bloodruth scolds someone, saying, "You could have waited. At least we know we're in the right place." But who is she scolding? Is she scolding Avery? Avery didn't fling himself off the dragon. And we have no other instance in the book where Bloodruth actually talks to one of the animals. So it looks like she's scolding Avery, except that makes no sense. Now, this next section I call bad art sequencing. And that's because there are a couple of places in the book where the art sequencing is such that you have to wonder, wait a minute, did something happen in between these two panels? And then is a sequence of panels which is just really, really hard to explain. So in this sequence, we have Bloodruth running up at Avery, who then flings her at a higher level. He's standing on a high level, and the creatures are standing in a pit. Next thing we see in the very next panel is Avery in the middle of the pit. How did he get there? I mean, I know it's implied that he ran there, but if you're going from panel to panel with no intervening sequence, I mean, if Bloodruth had been flung up and then we saw her land on the ledge, and then we saw Avery fighting in the middle of the pit, we could say, oh, okay, while Bloodruth was landing, then Avery was making his way into the pit, and we can just imply what happened here. But not when there's no intervening scene at all. These are two subsequent these are two panels in sequence. These are two. The second panel immediately follows the first. How the hell did Avery get down in the pit? Well, I assume he jumped or something. But still, you got to show us that, or you got to give us some text that shows us the transition in progress, or at least relates the fact that a transition was made. Then there is this section that's toward the final portion of the book in which Avery is being grabbed from behind by one of these creatures, and the creature is about to explode, so Avery uses his powerful leg muscles, kind of like he did with Santuan, and just like in the Santuan scene, we're not really sure what the hell happens after that. Because in the first book, we weren't really sure whether he crashed into a wall across the street or crashed through a nearby wall, not having any idea of the layout of the place. This kind of works the same way. Avery goes in some direction, or maybe he's just venting energy backwards, or maybe what the hell is going on here? I mean, I think I've got it figured out to the point where it looks like the monsters are looking upward at the two of them, so I guess he leaps upward, and in his upward leap, it takes him through the roof of the place, maybe? I'm not entirely sure of that. Is he still underground at this point? Or is he above the mountain? Because I don't even know. And so he pushes himself off. But look where he pushes himself off from. You've got this long-ass arc where it looks like the creature is falling backwards, but Avery's nowhere near where he pushed off. He's in some other direction entirely. This is just not a good sequence of art. You have to be able to connect the dots somewhere, and there are just too many dots to connect, and they're not all in the lines they ought to be. Which leads us into the Youngblood ending of Isom number 2. A Youngblood ending is a hard stop, a stop that is so hard that it makes you wonder, wait a minute, is that it? Is the comic over now? And we get that in this page. Well, first of all, from Youngblood number 1. In this page, we see Die Hard, a Youngblood character, saying, "I've been waiting for this day, and this time you won't be as lucky." And then hard freaking stop. I swear to God, the book ends right there. I don't even know if it picks right back up in issue number 2. I don't remember that part. I just remember reading this and thinking, is that it? Are we done? Am I supposed to go, like, somewhere else? Where's the rest of the story? And the same thing happens to us with Isom number 2. We get a big boom as that creature explodes, and then Avery starts running, and then we're done. No regrouping with Bloodruth, nothing else to show to let us down easy. We just hit a hard stop in the acknowledgments. I hope you enjoyed Isom number 2. Well, no, because I just face planted on your speed bump here. What the hell? Oh my gosh. And what's worse is we get a crappy after credit scene after that. Now, let me explain how after credit scenes are supposed to work. Either they are supposed to highlight future projects, like the Isom #1 after credit scene did. Isom #1 highlighted the Norfolka project, which we have still yet to see, but hopefully that'll be coming out at least by 2025. But in terms of an after credit scene, that makes it okay because it's a future project. Or you can refer back to lore. You can make a reference back to a past character or a past event or something that the reader will know from other comic book lore that this is something significant. Like, for example, at the end of X-Men Apocalypse, it might not have been clear to everyone what the after credit scene significance was then, but what you saw was a briefcase with the logo Essex Corp. And Essex Corp referred to a character called Mr. Sinister in X-Men lore. And moreover, it was a foreshadowing of the next project, New Mutants, that was going to take place. So both the New Mutants new project and the lore of Essex Corp was in that after credits scene, which made it worthwhile and made it kind of an ooh-ah kind of thing. However, in Isom #2, you get our acknowledgments page, followed by some big-ass demon walking through the wreckage of all of his fallen minions, and then you get a picture of the demon, whom we've never seen before, who has no connection to anything we've ever seen in the past, and who we don't even know if is going to be appearing in Isom #3, because we're eventually somehow going to have to get back to the Darren story arc, right? So this is just a complete letdown as an after credit scene. And the interesting thing about it is, if you just let the ending play out like this, it would have given us a better ending overall, because you would have had Avery running away, and then you would have had the demon showing up, and then the revelation of the demon would have been a much better ending for the book. It would have been a more natural ending, and then when you turn the page to see the acknowledgments, it'd be like, oh, okay, that's the ending of the book. This would have been the better way to do it, but no, there has to be that after credit scene. Yeah, don't make use of a device that does not work with the material you've got. Now, the last point I want to bring up is unhelpful teaser text. And this occurs on the back cover of the book, because this is what's supposed to sell the book to the reader. And what the teaser text says on the back of Isom #2 is, just outside the city of Florispark, Texas, and I have no idea why it's emphasized, lives a man by the name of Avery Silman, and that should be emphasized. Once known as Isom, Avery retired from his hero persona to live an everyday life on his ranch. But this all changed after the events of Isom #1, which for some reason is not marked out as the title of the last book. His sister asks him to pay a visit to an old friend by the name of Darren Fontano, who is no longer the man Avery once knew. What was supposed to be a simple visit goes south. Now faced with threats that impact his friends, family, and co-workers, IHOP. Sorry, I'm a little hungry. Isom may have no choice but to return. But why did he quit in the first place? Okay, if you look at, first of all, correcting the items to make sure that the right things are emphasized and the wrong things are not, if you look at this portion of the teaser text, it's really, really good teaser text. If you're promoting Isom #1, because these are the events of Isom #1. However, if you're promoting the events of Isom #2 and trying to lure the reader in with interest on that, then you need to give us this to start with. You need to show us that, okay, here are the results of Isom #1 and what's going to come out of that. So here is my version of what helpful teaser text would look like. After the events of Isom #1, retired superhero Avery Silman faces threats that impact his friends, family, and co-workers. Haunted by failures past and present, Avery returns to his ranch to confront yet another menace, this one having a touch of the supernatural. Out of his depth, Avery must not only recruit the heroes Gooding and Sidney Bloodruth to his cause, but also decide whether to bring his Isom identity out of retirement. Can Avery overcome his past and the memory of Chadron? See, this gives you a nice, vague synopsis of what actually goes on in the book and invites a reader of either Isom number one or somebody who's never read Isom number one to take a look inside this particular book. You can't just refer everything back to the previous book. All right, one final thought that I want to leave with you has to do with my motives here, because I suffered some. I don't know if it's fair to call it slander from Ethan Van Sciver. I was watching one of his live streams, and he complained about me specifically, saying, "You're just trying to make yourself look smarter than Eric July." Now, come on. First of all, I don't need any help to look smart. I never have. But here are my real motives for the attention that I'm giving to the Rippaverse, aside from the fact that, it does get me clicks. Number one, the massive financial success of the Rippaverse has made it the most prominent producer of campaign comics. And by campaign comics, I'm referring to any comics that have to do with a campaign, whether it's crowdfunded or if it's a pre-order thing like the Rippaverse. So when people think of campaign comics now, they're going to think of the Rippaverse. So like it or not, this place that Rippaverse holds at the financial top of the market makes Rippaverse the premier representative of all campaign comics, including those produced by Comicsgate and other independent creators. You can't escape this. I mean, Rippaverse has become the comics triumph of the year. And so every independent creator is standing in the shadow of Rippaverse now. And what happens with Rippaverse is going to be thought of as representing what's happening in all of the other comics, whether they're related to him or not. Because Rippaverse is not Comicsgate. Comicsgate is not every independent creator. But all of this is going to wind up becoming a reflection on the quality of those things. So consequently, the quality of Rippaverse comics is going to be taken as representative of the quality of all other campaign comics. And that's very dangerous, because if Rippaverse is thought as the best that people can do, judging by the dollar amounts being taken in, then if Rippaverse's quality is shit, all campaign comics will suffer. All campaign comics, including Cyberfrog, including Rainbow the Brute, including all of these other properties like Accend and Cordrath and Ghosts of Matacumba Key and all these other titles that are associated with Comicsgate, and even titles that aren't associated with Comicsgate. They're all going to suffer if Rippaverse's quality is shit. And if you've been watching my videos, the one thing you should be able to take away from them is Rippaverse's quality is shit. All right? In fact, if you want to give my motive a voice, that's just it in and of itself. My motive is that Rippaverse's quality is shit, and it needs to improve for the sake of the whole independent comics publishing industry. It's going to hurt if people just look at this stuff and say, look at what garbage this is. Well, you have all these other independent comics, and they must not be any good either. All right, so that's the point. And so that's what I wanted to leave y'all with understanding as far as my Let's Fix series goes. I'm not doing this to try and make myself look smart. I'm doing this because these comics are not good. All right, especially Isom number 2. Now, I thought Isom number 1 was okay. It just had a lot of little flaws. But Isom number 2 is a bad book by and large. Probably the Bloodruth sequence was the best sequence in the book because it was a lot of just straight up superhero action. And that was good. That allowed Cliff Richards to do a lot of shining in there. And you had a lot of silence from Eric July's writing so that we didn't have a lot of that getting in the way. But I'm not, I mean, if this lack of quality control that we saw all throughout Isom number 2, if that lack of quality control is evident in Alpha Core and in Yaira and in Gooding and in any later Rippaverse products and the Rippaverse just becomes synonymous with shitty books, that's going to reflect bad on the entire industry of independent comics makers. And I don't want to see that happen. What I want to see is Isom number 2 learn, or the Rippaverse learn from its mistakes and then improve, because it can. There's no reason why it can't, unless the whole point is just to make as much money as quickly as possible. In which case, let's not pretend that these are good comics when they're not. I'm Mike Partika. Thank you for watching. Please do subscribe so that when I come out with future videos, you will be notified of those. I hope the sound quality on this one is okay. I'm trying to strain my voice and make it loud so that you can hear it. I heard there was a significant difference between this series of videos and the live stream that I did recently. So maybe it's the noise suppression in the software that I'm using now. If I don't use that noise suppression, what I'm afraid of is that you're going to wind up hearing my laptop blaring off like a jet engine, because the fans on this thing are so freaking loud. You know, sometimes it's just painful to find a balance between good sound quality and being able to be heard over things. So I don't know. Hope this worked for you. Anyway, thank you for watching. I am hoping to do like a subscriber drive or something in the near future, because I actually have enough watch hours now to qualify for advertising, which would be nice. Except I don't have the subscriber count for it. I have 627 subscribers. I need 1,000 in order to hit that minimum. And you know, if every one of you would be able to recommend one friend, then I would probably get that. So I should probably stop clapping my hands together here, because that's probably creating some noise too. Anyway, this has been a fun series, I have to say. I have enjoyed doing the Let's Fix Isom number 2 series. There will be a Let's Fix Isom number 1 series. I'm not sure what project I will be reviewing next. I have some editorial work coming from a couple of independent comics, and I did deliver one script to an indie comics publisher that hopefully that will be coming out sometime maybe in the next year. And so things are kind of picking up, and I know that I've got Andy Smith's Cordrath the Reckoning on the way. One of these days, I will be getting Ethan Van Sciver's Cyberfrog 2 Wrecked Planet and all the associated comics I bought with that. And then, of course, there's always Alpha Core number 1 right around the corner. So it'll be fun to pick that up and see if having actual, you know, known name professional writers and artists on your book actually means something. And we will see. I'm just hoping for, you know, some improvement in quality control, and maybe Chuck Dixon can lend some help and saying, hey, I need this to mean this to be here, this to be that, you know, maybe give him a pass at editing himself. All right, that's enough from me. I'm Mike Partika. Thank you very much for watching. Please do subscribe if you haven't already, and I will talk to you later.